Hello, this is Ryan Weatherby from the Office of Assessment. Today I'm going to go over what you need to know to start using ExamSoft for performance assessments. Performance assessments are just those type of assessments where you are evaluating students on something that they produce or do. So it could be an essay, it could be an oral presentation, some sort of observation that you're doing. And this is different from objective assessments where they're usually just filling out, multiple choice, fill in the blank, that sort of thing, where there's a definite right or wrong answer. Before I get started, I like to give this slide that shows all the members of the Office of Assessment. So if you have any ExamSoft or other assessment questions or needs, please don't hesitate to contact any one of us. Today, the objectives are that you will be able to log into ExamSoft. You'll be able to create a rubric in ExamSoft. You'll be able to create a performance assessment in ExamSoft and tie that to a rubric. And you'll be able to grade that performance assessment and, in the end, transfer those grades to Canvas and release grades to students through the ExamSoft portal. The first step is to log on to the ExamSoft portal. So you'll want to open a web browser and navigate to examsoft.com/Husson. From here, you'll enter your credentials in the bottom left-hand corner where I've highlighted. This is the administrator faculty login section. Don't try to log in where it says exam takers because your credentials won't work there. Your email address is your Husson email address, and the password would have been sent to you already in an email. If you haven't received that email, please let me know and I can set up an account for you in the system. Or I can also just re-email you some information how to reset your password. You can also hit the lost password button right here at the bottom of the login screen if you think you already have a password but you can't remember it. So once you have logged in, this is the first screen that you'll see. The portal is divided up into these tabs at the top. You'll see the questions, rubric, and assessments tab, and so on. Today we're mostly going to be talking about the rubrics tab and the assessments tab. The rubrics tab is where you build a rubric, and the assessments tab is where you actually build an assessment to post to your class. So let's start out with creating a rubric in ExamSoft. So you would go to the rubrics tab and you would click the button that says create new rubric at the top of the page. Once you do this, you have to enter some descriptive information about the rubric itself. So you have to give it a title. You have to select what folder to save that in. The questions, rubric, and assessment tabs in the portal all have a directory tree structure associated with them. So you'll have a class folder in each of those. And so for rubrics, you'd want to save your rubric to your class folder. If for some reason you don't have a class folder set up in there, you can always contact me and I can walk you through how to make one for yourself, or I can even make it for you if you let me know what class you want it for. It's also important to add a description to each rubric so that you and other people can see what this particular rubric was used for. Rubrics tend to be shared, so that's why the description is so important, so other people can also see what this particular rubric is for. Once you've done that, you'll want to set up how many rows and columns you'll need in this rubric. Rows are the performance indicators, so the actual skill that you're measuring, and the scoring criteria are just they're just a demarcation of the degree to which the student has met that skill. So once you proceed to the next screen, you'll see this template. And this is what you have to fill in. You have to fill in each of the different cells of this template to make the rubric meaningful to you and make it so that it's measuring what you want it to measure. So along the left-hand side, you'll see each of those rows. You'll want to add your performance indicator language into each of those cells. And along the top, you'll see where you need to enter your scoring criteria. And then all the middle part is the language that just describes what students had to do to meet each level of that score, of that performance indicator. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to ExamSoft to show you what this looks like. So again, when we first log in, this is the screen you'll see. We're going to be in the rubrics tab initially. So we'll click on the rubrics tab. You'll see this is the directory structure that I was talking about. You won't see all of these different directories. We have it set up so that you just see what you really need to see, so you don't see all this extra clutter. But this is the create rubric button that I was talking about. So let's go ahead and we're going to click that. And this is where we have to add a title. So I'm going to call this example rubric. We would want to put it in a particular folder that we have access to. So if I click this button, I can see all the folders that are available to me. I'm going to put it in this training folder, my name, and then faculty examples. And you can see right here what folder it's ended up in. And then, like I said, we want to give it a description. And we want to specify how many rows and columns. So for mine, maybe it has only 3 rows, and for scoring criteria. You can specify that each scoring criteria is associated with 1 point value, and this is what we typically recommend. But you can also provide a range of point values for each of your scoring criteria. We don't recommend this because this makes the rubric more subjective, and really the whole point is to take something that could be very subjective, assigning points to something like an essay, and making it as objective as possible. So we recommend you stick with a single point value for each scoring criteria. So once you're ready, you can hit the create button, and that's when you come up, this template comes up. And you need to fill out every section of this template to make the rubric function the way that you need it to function for what you're measuring. Cindy may have already done this for you if you've been working with her. So this may already be filled out and saved somewhere in ExamSoft for you, and she will have given you information on where to find that rubric. You can also and should assign a category to each of the performance indicators in the rubric. In many cases, this might just be a gen ed learning outcome. When you're ready, you can hit the save button. I'm not going to save this particular one because I haven't added anything to it. But when you have finished with yours, you'll hit save. And you can save at any time and come back to it and make changes or updates. And you'll see that there are a couple example rubrics. I'm going to use one of these example rubrics when we get to actually posting the assessment. If you hover over the preview tab, you can see a little bit of the rubric. It's not the complete rubric, but it might be enough to kind of get an idea of what that rubric is about. If you want to see more of the rubric, you just have to click on it here and it'll open the complete rubric. Okay, so now that we have a rubric created, we want to build an assessment so that we can tie the rubric essentially with the class roster so that we can actually start collecting information or measurements about student performance. So to do that, we're going to click on the Assessments tab at the top of the screen. When you do that and you hit the Create New Assessment button, it will prompt you for what kind of assessment you want to create. We're talking about performance grading now. Everything we've been talking about has been performance grading, but if the system would also allow you to do more objective type test creation from a question bank. So if you had a set of multiple choice fill in the blank essay questions, you could build an exam or a test based on those as well. But that's not what we're talking about today. So when you create a new performance assessment, you have this screen where you have to add some information. You have to give the assessment a title, who created it, what type of assessment it is, and that's a drop-down list that has a couple different options, which I'll show you in a minute. And then you want to make sure that this is saved to the correct class folder as well. We are now in the assessments part of the portal, but there is a whole directory tree structure here as well, and you should have a class folder already set up. Again, if you don't, let me know and I can create it for you. The next step is to click the Add Rubrics button because we want to associate a rubric with this assessment so that we can then collect data using a particular rubric. When you do that, and then go to the next step of posting the assessment, this is where you actually tie the assessment with a particular course. And by doing that, you'll have your proper course roster associated with this assessment. Probably the most important part of this screen is selecting the right course. The posting end date is just the due date of your assessment. And then everything on the bottom of the screen is optional. So you can choose to pre-release the rubric to the students. You can send them specific instructions for their assessment through the portal. So you, for example, upload a Word file with the description of the assessment tasks in it, and you could give that to them here. And you can also require that they upload their answer files. For example, if it's an essay, they could upload their Word file that contains their essay through the ExamSoft portal. However, none of that is required. They could submit anything that they need to submit through Canvas, and you just have to open up their work in Canvas and have ExamSoft open on a separate screen. And then you can fill out the rubric in ExamSoft on one screen and read their content in Canvas on the other screen, for example. You could also have a hard copy, or it could be a presentation that you're assessing anyway, and there's nothing to hand in. So then the next step would be, now that you've posted the assessment, you can start collecting data. So you'll go back to the assessment, I'll show you this in a moment, and you'll get to the rubric, and then you'll just fill out the rubric. You'll just click on whichever cell matches the description of the skills that the students have shown. So you'll have the language in here will be clear enough so that you'll be able to select which cell is appropriate for the student work that you're seeing. You also have the ability to make a comment on each of the rows of the assessment. So you can make comments here that are specific to that performance indicator, but you can also make overall comments at the bottom. And then you would hit save, and you can go to the next exam taker. Okay, let's show you how that works in ExamSoft. So again, we're on the Assessments tab now. I'm going to create a new assessment, so I'm going to click on this Create New Assessments button. Remember, we don't want to make an assessment from a question bank today. We're going to make a performance grading assessment. So I'm going to click on that button. We'll give it the title. We'll just call it Example Rubric Assessment. We have the creator. You can select a number of different types of assessment. So maybe it's a writing assignment. So I would select that. Today I'm just going to select mock practice because this is not a real assessment. And then you'd want to select the folder where it's going to, this assessment is going to live and where you can find it. I'm going to put it in my training folder under my name under faculty examples. There we go. Okay, so now we want to actually add the rubric we've already created to this assessment. That's pretty important to do right now. Otherwise, we won't have the rubric to use when we're trying to score the students. So let's hit the Add Rubric button. And we can go, now we're looking at the directory tree structure in the rubrics part of the portal. So we'd want to go find wherever we stored that rubric. And I'm going to use this one, example 2 rubric. So just click by the one I want. And then I'm going to hit the Add Selected to Assessment button. And then close. And you'll see it showed up right here. Now, it is possible to add more than one rubric to an assessment. It may be that you've divided up the tasks in the assessment such that it made sense to have more than one rubric. Well, then you can add more here and then just specify the weight that that rubric represents in the overall assessment. You divide it up that way. Okay, since we're ready to go to the next step, I'm going to hit Save. And now we have a draft of this assessment, but we need to post it to an actual class so we can start collecting that data. So I'm going to hit the Post button. And this is where we select the class that is going to be given this assignment. I'm going to select our fake Goofology class. And then you put the due date of the assignment here. I'm just going to select tomorrow for the due date. And I'm not going to collect any information or pre-release the rubric through ExamSoft. Maybe that's something I would do through Canvas instead. So I'm going to leave all of this part blank, and I'm just going to hit Save Changes. And you'll see when I do that, a new set of tabs appears at the top of the middle part of the screen. And these only appear once we've actually posted an assessment. So there's some, you can go into exam taker activity and you can see all the students in this class. We only have 4 fake students. You can see if their rubric, their assessment has been graded yet or not. But the part that you'll want to go to actually enter the rubric information is the grade tab. So once you get here, you'll hit the grade posting button. And then we're going to go to find the student we want to grade, hit the grade button, and this is when the rubric pops up. And all you have to do is select the part of the rubric, the cell for that part of the rubric that applies to whatever skill that they have shown that they can do for this assessment. So the language in the rubric should be specific enough that you can select which cell is appropriate, and therefore associating what they have produced with the scoring criteria. You can also add your comments here or your overall comments on the bottom, as I mentioned before. When you're done, you'll hit save, and you can go to the next exam taker, or press this button at the top to go back to the exam taker list, and then grade whichever student you want to grade next. I'm going to clear the grading for this because it's not real data anyway. Okay, so that is how you enter information to the rubric in ExamSoft. Let's go back to the presentation. When you're finished entering all of the information in the rubrics for all of your students, you can push your grades to Canvas. You just go back to the Assessments tab, find your actual list of assessments. In this case, we have one called Business Rubric Training. And then you just come over here and click the Push Grades button, and it'll walk you through the process of pushing the grades for this assignment to your Canvas gradebook. You may want to look at the results first before you do that. So to do that, you click on the assessment name itself, and you know that row of tabs that appears when you post an assessment. Well, one of those tabs is called Report Scoring, and under that tab there's an option called Exam Taker Results. If you want to click on that, and you can see the scores for all the students. If you want to release the scores through ExamSoft itself, you go back to that Report Scoring tab, click on Release Exam Taker Results, and then you have a lot of options for what you release to the students, so carefully select what you actually want to release to them, and then click the click the Send Link with Email button, and they'll get an email in the system that there are results waiting for them in the portal, and a direct link to those results. So that's all I wanted to go over today. If you want to take a deeper dive into ExamSoft, maybe you want to learn more about the objective testing parts of the portal or different reports that are available, we do have a Canvas course available. So just let me know if you're interested in taking that. It's about an hour-and-a-half long, self-directed, self-paced, and there's a bunch of different simulations that you can go through in the portal. We also have the Brown Bag training series, which runs in the fall and the spring, and you'll be receiving a schedule for that training before too long. Of course, I can always do one-on-one training with you if you can't make a brown bag training, or if you just need extra help with something, don't hesitate to contact me and we can set up some one-on-one training time. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions.